Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Endeavour and watched the alien ship grow larger on the main screen. 3 months of travel through space had brought them to this moment. First contact with another intelligent species. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. Dr. Lisa Grant checked her equipment one more time. She was the ship's chief scientist and the expert on alien life. Everything they had trained for was about to happen. Lieutenant Sam Parker sat at the communications station, his fingers ready on the controls. Commander Alex Turner stood near the weapons console, not because they expected trouble, but because it was his job to be ready for anything. The alien ship was beautiful in a way that human ships were not. It looked like it was made of crystal and light. Long curved sections twisted around each other in patterns that seemed to flow like water. The whole thing glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake pressed the button to open the communication channel. Sam had been working for weeks to establish basic contact with the aliens. They had managed to create a simple translation system using mathematics and basic concepts. It was crude, but it worked. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Endeavour," Jake said slowly and clearly. "We come in peace and friendship. We wish to learn about your people and share knowledge." The response came quickly. The voice that came through the speakers was musical and high-pitched. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with the sound of running water. The translation system worked to convert the alien words into English. "Greetings, creatures from the small world. I am Sub-Commander Zelenara of the Zephyrian Collective. Your primitive vessel has been detected in our space. We are curious about your species." Lisa felt a small chill at the word primitive, but she kept her expression neutral. This was first contact. Every word mattered. Every reaction would be studied and remembered. "We would be honored to meet with you in person," Jake replied. "Our species is called human. We come from a world we call Earth, though our ancient name for it was TERRA." There was a pause. Then what sounded like musical laughter came through the speakers. "Humans, hairless apes from a mud world. Yes, we have heard such creatures might exist in this region of space. You are smaller than we expected, and much more ugly." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Alex's jaw tightened slightly. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Sam looked confused. Jake kept his voice level and professional. "We would still like to meet and establish formal contact between our peoples," Jake said. "Of course, little apes. We are always amused by primitive life forms. You may dock with our vessel. But first you must understand something. We are members of the Galactic Confederation. We are civilized beings. You are barely evolved mammals who have just learned to leave your world. Do not expect to be treated as equals." The communication channel closed with a soft chime. The bridge was quiet for a moment. "Well," Lisa said finally, "that went about as well as our worst-case scenarios." Alex crossed his arms. "They called us hairless apes." "They also called us ugly," Sam added helpfully. Jake sighed. "We knew this might happen. Not every species would welcome us with open arms. We proceed with the mission. We're here to represent humanity, not to get our feelings hurt." The alien ship sent a docking signal. The Endeavor's computer systems worked to match the alien docking protocols. It took several attempts, but finally the two ships connected with a soft thud. Jake selected a small team for the face-to-face meeting. He would go along with Lisa, Sam, and 2 security officers. They'd put on their best dress uniforms and checked their translation. Devices one more time. The airlock opened and they stepped into the alien ship. The corridors were tall and curved, made of the same crystal-like material as the ship's hull. Soft blue light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air smelled like ozone and flowers. Sub-Commander Zelenara was waiting for them in what appeared to be a meeting room. She was tall, nearly 8 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Her features were sharp and angular, like someone had carved her from ice. Her eyes were large and silver, without visible pupils. She wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of liquid light. 2 other Zephyrians stood with her. They were equally tall and beautiful, but their robes were different colors. One wore gold, the other deep purple. "So," Zelenara said, her voice now coming directly from her throat instead of through speakers, These are the famous hairless apes. You are even more primitive looking than our sensors indicated. The golden-robed alien leaned forward to examine the humans more closely. Look at their tiny eyes, and that ridiculous hair growing only on the tops of their heads. What possible evolutionary purpose could such ugly features serve? The purple-robed one made a sound that might have been laughter, and so short. These adults or children? Jake felt his team's tension, but he kept his diplomatic smile in place. We are honored to meet you. I am Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Lisa Grant, our chief scientist. Lieutenant Sam Parker, our communications specialist. Scientists, the Golden One said with amusement. What could primitive apes possibly know about science? Do you even understand the basic principles of space-time manipulation? Lisa stepped forward slightly. We have developed faster-than-light travel, quantum communication systems, and fusion power. Our knowledge may be different from yours, but we are not primitive. The three Zephyrians looked at each other and made sounds that were definitely laughter. Fusion power, Selenara repeated. How wonderfully crude. We stopped using such primitive energy sources 20,000 years ago, and your faster-than-light travel is so slow and inefficient. It must take you months to travel between star systems. We are still learning, Jake said patiently. That is why we are here, to learn from more advanced civilizations like yours. Learning, the Purple One said. Yes, I suppose even apes can learn simple tricks. Very well, we will take you to the Galactic Council. They will be amused to see what the galaxy's newest joke species looks like. The Galactic Council? Lisa asked. The governing body of civilized species, Selenara explained. They will decide what to do with you, whether you should be classified as pets, livestock, or perhaps laboratory specimens. Your primitive world will need proper supervision, of course. Hairless apes cannot be allowed to wander through space unsupervised. Alex's hand moved slightly toward his sidearm before Jake gave him a small shake of the head. We represent a free and independent world, Jake said firmly. We seek friendship and trade, not supervision. The laughter this time was louder and more musical. Free and independent, the Golden One repeated. How adorable. The little apes think they are people. The meeting continued for another hour. The Zephyrians asked many questions about human technology, culture, and biology. Each answer was met with condescension and amusement. They seemed particularly entertained by human emotional responses and the concept of individual rights. When the meeting finally ended, the humans returned to their ship feeling frustrated and humiliated. But they had accomplished something important. First contact was established. The aliens had agreed to escort them to the Galactic Council, even if it was just for their own amusement. As the Endeavor followed the Zephyrian ship toward the galactic core, Jake stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. Humanity was about to meet the galaxy. He just hoped they were ready for what they would find there. The journey to Nexus Prime took 5 days. During that time, more alien ships joined their small convoy. Jake watched from the bridge as vessels of impossible shapes and sizes appeared around them. Some looked like living creatures made of metal and light. Others were geometric forms that hurt to look at directly. A few seemed to be made of pure energy contained in invisible force fields. Ambassador Karen Wells had arrived on the Endeavor just before they left Earth's solar system. She was a career diplomat who had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Her team included General Ryan Cooper, a stern military man who said little but observed everything, and Dr. Ben Hayes, an expert on human cultures who hoped to help the aliens understand humanity better. How many species are we going to meet? Karen asked as she watched the alien fleet grow larger. The Zephyrians mentioned over 40, Lisa replied. The Galactic Confederation has been around for thousands of years. We're the newest species they've encountered in centuries. Sam looked up from his communication station. I'm picking up transmissions between the alien ships. The translation software is still rough, but they're definitely talking about us. Words like amusing, primitive, and pets keep coming up. General Cooper's expression darkened. They're treating this like a circus act. That's exactly what It is, Karen said grimly. We need to be prepared for the worst. If these are the reasonable ones, imagine what the others will be like. Nexus Prime appeared on their screens as a massive space station built around a small moon. The structure was so large it could be seen from millions of miles away. Rings and towers extended in all directions, connected by bridges of light that pulsed with energy. Ships moved around it like insects around a flower. The Endeavour was guided to a small docking bay that seemed designed for visiting vessels. As they prepared to disembark, Zelenara's voice came over the communication system. Prepare yourselves, little apes. You are about to meet the representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Try not to embarrass yourselves too badly. The human delegation put on their finest diplomatic uniforms and checked their translation devices. Karen had insisted they look as professional and dignified as possible. If they were going to be judged on appearance, they would at least look their best. The docking bay was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above, and the walls were covered with symbols and writing in dozens of different languages. Aliens of every conceivable shape and size moved through the space. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air, and a few seemed to teleport from place to place. Zelenara met them at the airlock with 2 guards, who looked like giant insects made of silver metal. They escorted the humans through corridors filled with even more strange beings. Jake tried not to stare, but it was impossible not to be amazed by the diversity of life forms. They passed tall, thin creatures that looked like walking trees, short, round beings covered in fur rolled along on wheels instead of walking. A group of beings made entirely of colored gas drifted past, somehow maintaining their shape without any visible container. The council chamber is just ahead, Zelenara said. You will be presented to the assembled representatives. Answer their questions honestly and try not to say anything too stupid. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater with seats rising up in circles toward a domed ceiling. Hundreds of different species filled the seats, creating a symphony of colors, shapes, and sizes that was overwhelming to human eyes. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform with a podium and several chairs. A being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a human sat on a throne-like chair at the highest point of the chamber. Its scales were deep red and gold, and its eyes glowed with inner fire. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber without any visible amplification. Welcome, creatures from the primitive world. I am High Counselor Veximer of the Vorthan Empire. You stand before the Galactic Council, representatives of 43 advanced civilizations. State your names and the purpose of your visit. Karen stepped forward. I am Ambassador Karen Wells, representing the planet Earth and the human species. We come seeking peaceful contact and hoping to join the galactic community. A sound like thunder filled the chamber. It took the humans a moment to realize it was laughter from hundreds of different species all at once. Join the galactic community, Veximer repeated, his voice dripping with amusement. The Hairless Apes wish to be considered equals to the great civilizations of the galaxy. A new voice spoke from somewhere in the crowd. It sounded like electronic music mixed with the screech of metal on metal. What makes these primitive mammals think they deserve a place among us? Look at them, another voice called out. This one sounded like wind through caves. So small and weak, their lifespans must be tiny. How could such short-lived creatures accomplish anything of value? A floating jellyfish-like creature drifted down from the upper seats. Its body was transparent and filled with swirling lights. When it spoke, its voice was like singing crystal. I have studied their biology from the Zephyrian reports. They are omnivores who evolved from prey animals. They have no natural weapons, no protective shell or scales, no venomous bite. How did such helpless creatures even survive long enough to develop technology? General Cooper stepped forward despite Karen's warning look. We survived because we're adaptable. We use tools, we work together, and we never give up. The laughter was even louder this time. Tools, the crystal voice said mockingly. How primitive. We evolved beyond the need for external tools millions of years ago. A massive creature that looked like a walking mountain spoke in a voice like an earthquake. These creatures claim to work together, yet their planet is divided into hundreds of separate nations that constantly fight each other. What kind of cooperation is that? Dr. Hayes tried to explain human history and culture, but his words were lost in the noise of alien amusement. Every human achievement was dismissed as primitive. Every human quality was mocked as a sign of evolutionary failure. A group of insect-like beings buzzed with electronic voices. Their technology is pathetic. They still use chemical rockets for basic transportation. Their computers are slower than our children's toys. And their art, added a snake-like creature with dozens of eyes along its body. We reviewed their cultural transmissions. Primitive noise they call music, crude scratches. They call painting, and simplistic stories they call literature. Karen tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, but Jake could see the strain in her face. Ben looked devastated as his life's work was dismissed as worthless. Even the normally unshakable General Cooper was clenching his fists. The mockery continued for over an hour. Each species seemed to compete with the others to come up with more creative insults. The humans were called everything from barely evolved bacteria to the galaxy's newest comedy act. Finally, Veximer raised a clawed hand for silence. The question before us is simple, he announced. What shall we do with these creatures? They are clearly too primitive to be considered for membership in the Confederation. But they have achieved space travel, so they cannot be completely ignored. Make them pets, suggested the jellyfish creature. They might be entertaining to watch. Use them for medical experiments, called out an electronic voice. Their biology is simple enough that they might be useful as test subjects. Put them in a zoo, laughed another voice. Charge admission for other species to come and observe primitive behavior. Karen's professional mask finally slipped. We are a free species representing a sovereign world. We will not accept being treated as animals or property. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. Free species, Veximer repeated. Sovereign world. The little apes think they have rights. How adorable, the crystal voice sang. They believe they are people. A new creature spoke up. It looked like a walking tree made of metal and gemstones. Perhaps we should be kind to them. After all, they are very young as species go. In a few million years, they might evolve into something useful. If they survive that long, added the snake-like being, most primitive species destroy themselves within a few thousand years of achieving space travel. Veximer stood up from his throne. His massive form cast a shadow over the human delegation. The council has reached a decision, he announced. The species known as humans will be placed under the protective custody of the Zephyrian Collective. They will be studied and observed to determine if they have any potential for future development. Their world will be monitored to ensure they do not become a danger to themselves or others. What does that mean exactly? Karen demanded. It means, Zelenara said with musical laughter, that you are now our responsibility. Your species will do nothing in space without our permission. Your world will accept Zephyrian observers to monitor your progress. Think of us as your guardians until you grow up enough to take care of yourselves. And if we refuse? General Cooper asked. The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence was not amused. It was threatening. Then, Veximer said quietly, you will discover why primitive species do not make demands of their betters. Kethver was ancient by the standards of his people. At 1,047 years old, he had served the Vorthan Empire as a historian and record-keeper for most of his very long life. His scales had faded from bright red to dull bronze, and his once powerful frame had grown thin with age. But his mind remained sharp, and his memory held secrets that younger Vorthans had forgotten. He was organizing data crystals in the deep archives when the news reached him. A junior archivist named Sekthal burst into the quiet chamber with information from the recent council meeting. Master Kethver, the young Vorthan said excitedly, you should have seen it. The council met with a new primitive species. They call themselves humans, and they claim to come from a world called TERRA. Kethvar's clawed hand froze over the data crystal he was holding. The ancient storage device slipped from his grasp and shattered on the stone floor. "What did you say?" Kethvar whispered. "The new species, Master. They're hairless apes from a primitive world." "Very amusing, really. The Council has placed them under Zephyrian protection because they're too backward to— Did you say TERRA?" Kethvar interrupted, his voice harsh with sudden fear. Sekthal looked confused. "Yes, Master, TERRA. An ugly name for an ugly world, according to the reports. Why do you ask?" Kethvar's ancient heart began to beat faster. With trembling hands, he activated his personal access terminal and began searching through the deepest, most restricted archives. Files that he had not opened in centuries. Records that were sealed behind warnings and classification codes. "Master, what are you doing?" Sekthal asked. "Those archives require the highest security clearance." "I have that clearance," Kethvar sighed grimly. "I am one of the few who remembers why these records were sealed." His search brought up file after file of corrupted and incomplete data. Most of the records from 50,000 years ago had been deliberately destroyed or lost to time, but fragments remained. Pieces of a puzzle that told a story the modern galaxy had tried very hard to forget. The first file he opened made Sekthal gasp. It was a military report from the ancient Vorthan archives, written in the old language that few modern Vorthans could read. "Combat report, Vorthan 5th Fleet," Kethvar translated as he read. "Engagement with Terran raiders in the outer. Spiral. Recommendation. Avoid direct confrontation. Terran combat effectiveness exceeds all projections. Request immediate withdrawal of all civilian vessels from contested sectors." "Terrans were raiders?" Sekthal asked, his confusion growing. "Among other things," Kethvar muttered, opening another file. This one was a medical report that made the old historian's blood run cold. Biological analysis of captured Terran specimens. Warning: subjects demonstrate impossible physical capabilities. Healing rate exceeds any known species by factor of 10. Bone density suggests ability to survive impacts that would kill most sentients. Muscle fiber composition indicates sustained physical activity over periods measured in days rather than hours. "That can't be right," Sekthal said. "The humans we saw were small and weak. Hairless apes, as the Council said." Kethvar continued, searching, finding fragments of ancient battle reports, scientific studies, and diplomatic warnings. Each piece of information painted a picture that contradicted everything the modern galaxy believed about the primitive species they had just encountered. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Zixtal was having a similar experience. The quantum collective data archaeologist existed primarily as pure energy, but maintained a physical form when working with old data systems. Zixtal had been alive for 3,000 years and had access to information archives that spanned the entire history of galactic civilization. The news about the humans had reached the quantum collective through normal diplomatic channels. Like most species, they had been amused by the description of primitive apes who thought they deserved a place among advanced civilizations. But something about the name TERRA had triggered a deep memory in Zixtal's ancient consciousness. The quantum collective's archives were different from physical storage systems. They existed as patterns of energy and light accessible only to beings who could interface directly with quantum data streams. Zixtal dove deep into the oldest layers of information, searching for references to TERRA, what the energy being found there sent. Waves of shock through the entire collective consciousness. Data fragment 7,493,281, Zixtal announced to the other collective members. Origin, Quantum Historical Archive, Level 9 restricted. Content, Species Profile, Designation, Terran, Classification, Extreme Threat. The collective shared Zixtal's shock as the ancient data was revealed. Terrans demonstrate unique among known species the ability to form pack bonds with other sentient creatures. This includes bonding with predator species that would normally consume them. Terran-bonded creatures show increased aggression, tactical intelligence, and loyalty beyond normal behavioral parameters. More fragments followed, each one more disturbing than the last. Terrans exhibit persistence hunting behavior on a scale unprecedented in the galaxy, capable of pursuing prey across multiple star systems over periods exceeding standard years. Do not attempt to flee from Terran hunters, they will follow. Terran pain tolerance classified as impossible by galactic medical standards. Subjects continue to function at full capacity despite injuries that would incapacitate or kill other species. Most dangerous Terran trait, emotional bonding with non-Terran individuals and groups. Bonded Terrans will sacrifice themselves without hesitation to protect bond partners. This makes them nearly impossible to negotiate with or control. In another sector of space, Thrumgak was having his own moment of horrible recognition. The old Krell warrior had been drinking fermented plant juice with his battle brothers when news of the council meeting reached their colony world. The Krell were an insectoid species known for their skill in combat and their long memories of ancient conflicts. Hairless Apes from TERRA, one of the younger warriors had said with amusement. Can you imagine anything more pathetic? Thrumgak had been about to laugh along with the others when his grandfather's words came flooding back to him. The old warrior had died decades ago, but he had fought in the wars of the previous generation. He had told stories that the young Krell had thought were just folklore. TERRA, Thrumgak whispered. My grandfather spoke of TERRA. The other Krell looked at him strangely. Your grandfather fought against Hairless Apes? Not against, Thrumgak said slowly. He served as a mercenary in the Outer Rim conflicts. He told me about warriors from TERRA who fought alongside Krell units. He called them the Pale Demons. The conversation in the tavern stopped. Other old Krell began to remember similar stories from their own ancestors. Tales of human warriors who could fight for days without rest. Stories of Terran units that never retreated, never surrendered, and never left their comrades behind. The battle songs, one of the eldest Krell said suddenly. The old war chants mentioned Terran death singers. Warriors who would sing while they died to give courage to their allies. Throughout the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Ancient species were remembering fragments of stories they had thought were myths. Scholars were finding references to TERRA in the deepest archives. Warriors were recalling battle songs about Terran fighters, but the most disturbing discovery came from Kethver's continued research. Deep in the Vorthan archives, he found a file that made his ancient blood freeze in his veins. Galactic Defense. Protocol 7, he read aloud to the now terrified Sekthal. Implementation date, 49,847 galactic standard years ago. Objective, complete elimination of Terran threat through coordinated orbital bombardment of primary world and hunting down of scattered populations. Elimination? Sekthal stammered. But the humans are still alive. Kethver continued reading. Protocol 7 declared successful after 3 years of operation. Terran homeworld rendered uninhabitable. Surviving populations eliminated or scattered beyond effective organization. Threat level reduced to 0. All records of Terran capabilities. To be classified or destroyed to prevent future panic. But if the protocol was successful, Sekthal said, how are there still humans? Kethver looked at his young assistant with eyes full of ancient fear. Don't you understand? Protocol 7 failed. The Terrans survived. They went back to their homeworld and rebuilt their civilization. They've had 50,000 years to recover and grow stronger. The old historian began transmitting urgent messages to contacts throughout the galaxy. Other ancient beings were reaching the same terrifying conclusion. The species that the Galactic Council had just mocked and humiliated were not primitive newcomers to space. They were the descendants of the galaxy's most feared warriors, returned from a world that was supposed to be dead. Zixtal shared the discovery with the Quantum Collective. Terran population at time of Protocol 7 implementation, approximately 100 million scattered across 200 worlds. Current human population according to first contact reports, over 12 billion on homeworld alone. Thrumgak told his fellow Krell, my grandfather said Terrans never forgot their friends or their enemies. He said they would wait generations for revenge, but they always remembered. The secret could not be contained. Within days of the first discoveries, ancient beings across the galaxy were frantically searching through their most restricted archives. What they found painted a picture that challenged everything the modern Galactic community believed about their own history. Kethver had not slept in 3 days. The old Vorthan historian had called in favors from contacts across dozens of species, gaining access to archives that had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Each new discovery made the situation more terrifying. "Master Kethver," Sekthal said as he entered the archives with another data crystal, "I found this in the deepest vaults. It requires your personal authorization to open." The crystal was black as space itself, marked with warning symbols in the ancient Vorthan language. Kethver had not seen one like it in centuries. These were reserved for information considered too dangerous for normal storage. When he activated the crystal, a holographic display filled the chamber. The image showed a detailed map of the galaxy as it had existed 50,000 years ago. Red markers indicated Terran settlements and outposts. There were hundreds of them, scattered across every arm of the galaxy. "They were everywhere," Sekthal whispered. "This is only what we knew about," Kethver replied grimly. "The Terrans were master colonists. They could survive on worlds that would kill other species within hours." The map zoomed in on individual systems, showing detailed reports from Vorthan observers. Each report told the same story. Terran settlements thriving on worlds considered uninhabitable. Terran traders dealing fairly with all species. Terran warriors serving as mercenaries and peacekeepers throughout the galaxy. "Listen to this," Kethver said, reading from one of the files. "Trade Agreement 4401 between Vorthan Empire and Terran Federation." Quote, "Terrans demonstrate unusual loyalty to agreed terms. No recorded instances of contract violation in over 200 years of trade relations. Recommend continued partnership." End quote. "They were trusted partners?" Sekthal asked in amazement. "More than that," Kethver said, opening another file. "Military. Alliance Treaty 7892. The Vorthan Empire formally requests Terran military assistance in border conflicts with the Qualeth Horde. Terran units demonstrate tactical flexibility and combat effectiveness far beyond their numbers." The hologram changed to show battle reports and tactical analyses. Sekthal read over his master's shoulder, his eyes growing wider with each document. "Small Terran units consistently defeat enemy forces 10 times their size through superior tactics and refusal to retreat. Recommend immediate expansion of alliance to include full military partnership. Terran medic units show remarkable ability to treat wounds in multiple species. Request permanent assignment of Terran medical personnel to Vorthan fleet operations. Terran engineers capable of repairing systems from any known technology base. Suggest technology exchange program to benefit both civilizations." Across the galaxy, Zixtal was making similar discoveries in the Quantum Collective's energy archives. The data patterns that emerged told a story of a species that had been respected and valued by every major civilization. "Fellow Collective members," Zixtal broadcast to the others, "observe this data stream. It contains 15,000 years of diplomatic records between the Collective and the Terran Federation." The energy beings shared the information instantaneously, experiencing the shock as one. The records showed extensive scientific collaboration between humans and the Collective. Terran scientists had contributed to advances in quantum mechanics, energy manipulation, and dimensional theory. "Note this entry," Zixtal continued. "Joint Research Project 881,445. Terran and Collective scientists successfully developed stable wormhole technology. Terran researchers demonstrate intuitive understanding of quantum principles despite biological limitations. Recommend permanent research partnership." More files revealed the scope of the collaboration. Terrans had served as explorers, mapping dangerous regions of space that energy beings could not safely enter. They had acted as ambassadors, their unique ability to form emotional bonds making them ideal mediators between species that could not normally communicate. "Most significant finding," Zixtal announced, Data pattern 12,847,901. The Great Plague of 47,382 Galactic Standard years ago. Biological weapon deployed by unknown species threatened to destroy all organic life in 3 spiral arms. TERRA. Medical researchers developed cure within 6 months, refusing payment and sharing the cure freely with all affected species. The revelation sent shockwaves through the collective. The Great Plague was remembered as one of the galaxy's worst disasters. The fact that Terrans had saved millions of worlds from extinction had been completely erased from modern records. Meanwhile, Thrumgak had gathered the eldest Krell warriors on his colony world. These ancient fighters had access to oral traditions that went back further than any written records. What they remembered was both inspiring and terrifying. "My great-grandfather fought in the War of the Seven Suns," old warrior Kixmal said, his voice crackling with age. "He told me that Terran and Krell units fought side by side against the machine intelligences. The Terrans were the only species that could match Krell ferocity in battle, but they fought with their minds as well as their claws." Another elder, Vextek, nodded his massive head. "The battle songs remember them. Pale demons who sing death songs, brothers in battle, faithful unto the void. That was how the old chants described them. But they were more than warriors," Thrumgak said, sharing what he had learned from other sources. "The Terrans served as peacekeepers throughout the galaxy. They were the ones other species called when disputes needed to be settled fairly." The gathered Krell listened as their elder continued. "The old stories say that Terrans could make friends with any species, even natural enemies. They had a gift for understanding what others needed and finding ways to help." "And then why were they destroyed?" asked a younger warrior. The elders exchanged grim looks. "Fear," Kixmal said simply. The younger races became afraid of Terran influence. They saw how easily Terrans made allies, how effectively they solved problems, how quickly they spread across the galaxy. Some began to see them as a threat to the natural order. As the investigation continued across the galaxy, a pattern began to emerge. The destruction of the Terrans had not been a single event, but a coordinated campaign that had taken years to plan and execute, Kethver discovered. The first evidence in a deeply buried Vorthan military file. "Operation Silent Dawn," he read to the horrified Sekthal. "Classified planning document for coordinated action against Terran expansion. Participants: Vorthan Empire, Koleth Horde, Zephyrin Collective, Nixarian Republic, and 17 Minor. Species: the document laid out the justification for what was to come. Terran population growth was deemed unsustainable. Their rapid expansion across the galaxy was seen as a threat to established territorial boundaries. Most damning of all, their ability to form alliances with any species was viewed as a danger to the existing balance of power. They were too successful, Sekthal said in amazement. They were destroyed because they were too good at making peace. Read this section, Kethver said, pointing to a particular passage. Terran diplomatic influence has resulted in the peaceful resolution of 847 major conflicts in the past century. This level of interference in natural selection processes is deemed unacceptable by the participating species. Zixtal was uncovering similar evidence in the Quantum Collective's archives. The energy beings had been among the primary architects of the plan to eliminate Terran influence. Data streamed 4,847,281. Zixtal shared with growing horror. Internal collective debate on the Terran problem. Quote, Terran emotional bonding capabilities represent a fundamental threat to logical governance. Their influence causes other species to prioritize irrational concepts like loyalty and friendship over efficient resource allocation, end quote. The debates revealed the twisted logic that had led to genocide. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had decided that Terrans were too good at being friends, too effective at solving problems, and too successful at surviving in hostile environments. Note this calculation, Zixtal continued. At current expansion rates, Terran influence systems will control 60% of galactic trade routes within 500 years. Terran diplomatic interventions have prevented 12 major wars that would have eliminated 8 minor species. Terran medical assistance has increased average galactic life expectancy by 23%. Each achievement was listed as evidence for why the Terrans had to be destroyed. The most damning evidence came from the final planning documents. The civilizations of the galaxy had spent decades preparing for what they called the correction. They had studied Terran psychology, mapped their settlements, and identified their weaknesses. The key to Terran elimination, one document read, lies in exploiting their primary weakness, emotional attachment. Terrans will sacrifice themselves to protect bonded individuals and groups. Simultaneous attacks on all major Terran population centers will force them to choose between saving their homeworld and protecting their scattered colonies. The truth could no longer be hidden. What had started as whispered conversations between ancient scholars was becoming a galaxy-wide panic as the reality of the situation spread through diplomatic channels, military networks, and intelligence services. High Counselor Vexamer sat in his private chambers on Nexus Prime, staring at a stack of data crystals that contained the most disturbing intelligence reports he had ever received. The proud Vorthan leader who had mocked the humans just days earlier now faced information that challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic history. "Are you certain of this information?" he asked the intelligence officer standing before him. Commander Zelenth was one of the Vorthan Empire's most trusted agents. She had spent the last 3 days verifying reports from sources across the galaxy. Her normally steady voice carried a tremor of fear as she replied, "Yes, High Counselor." Cross-references from 17 different species confirmed the same basic facts. The humans calling themselves Terrans are descended from the species we attempted to exterminate 50,000 years ago. Vexamer's claws scraped against the metal of his throne. "Attempted, you said attempted." The extermination was not as complete as our ancestors believed. Conservative estimates suggest that several 100,000 Terrans survived the bombardment of their homeworld and the subsequent hunting operations. They scattered to uninhabitable worlds in the galactic rim and went into hiding. And now? Current human population exceeds 12 billion on their homeworld alone. They have established colonies on over 300 worlds. Their technology level suggests they have been developing continuously for the entire 50,000-year period. Vexamer stood and walked to the massive window that looked out over Nexus Prime's sprawling structure. Thousands of ships from dozens of species moved through the space around the station. All of them belonged to civilizations that had participated in the destruction of TERRA. Have they discovered what was done to their ancestors? Unknown, High Counselor. But their reaction to the Council's treatment suggests they may already know more than they revealed during first contact. On Earth, Professor Emma Stone was having the most important breakthrough of her career. The human historian had been analyzing the intercepted alien communications that the Endeavor had recorded during their mission. What she found hidden in the data streams changed everything. Emma had always specialized in humanity's ancient history. The period around 50,000 years ago had been a mystery to human scientists. All they knew was that human civilization had nearly ended during what they called the Great Dying. Archaeological evidence suggested that the human population had dropped to less than 10,000 individuals scattered across the globe. The official theory was that climate change and natural disasters had caused the near extinction, but Emma had always questioned that explanation. The pattern of destruction was too uniform, too complete to be natural. Now, as she decoded the alien transmissions, she found references to names and places that appeared in humanity's oldest legends. Stories that had been dismissed as mythology were being discussed as historical fact by beings who claimed to have been there. "My God," she whispered as she read the translation of a Vorthan intelligence report. "They're talking about the bombardment of TERRA. They're talking about Operation Silent Dawn." Emma worked frantically through the night, cross-referencing alien communications with human archaeological data. Each piece of evidence supported the same impossible conclusion. Humanity's near extinction 50,000 years ago had not been natural. It had been genocide. The scattered human survivors had hidden on the most remote and dangerous parts of Earth, slowly rebuilding their civilization over thousands of generations. The myths and legends that spoke of a time when humanity had traveled between the stars were not fantasies. They were racial memories of what had been lost. As dawn broke over the university where Emma worked, she composed the most important message in human history. Her findings would need to be shared with Earth's government immediately. Humanity needed to know that they were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were refugees returning home. Meanwhile, in the highest levels of galactic government, emergency meetings were being called. Admiral Zareth, the supreme military commander of the Galactic Confederation, sat in a secure conference room with representatives from every major civilization. The insectoid Krell delegate buzzed with electronic anxiety. The situation is worse than we initially believed. Our analysis of human technology suggests they have developed weapons systems far beyond what they revealed during first contact. How far beyond? Admiral Zareth asked. Their faster-than-light drives are at least 2 generations ahead of our current technology. Their energy signatures suggest power generation capabilities that exceed most Confederation member species. The quantum collective representative, existing as a shimmering field of energy, pulsed with distress. More concerning is their biological development. Medical scans during the council meeting revealed that modern humans have retained all the physical advantages that made their ancestors so dangerous. Explain, Admiral Zareth commanded. Enhanced healing rates, extreme pain tolerance, unusual muscular density, and most significantly, their psychological profiles show the same pack-bonding behaviors that made ancient Terrans so effective in combat. A holographic display showed comparative biological data between ancient Terrans and modern humans. The similarities were undeniable. They are not a new species learning to explore space, the collective representative continued. They are the descendants of the galaxy's most successful warrior diplomats, returned with 50,000 years of technological advancement. The Zephyrian delegate, Sub-Commander Zelenara, who had led the first contact mission, spoke with a voice that had lost all its musical amusement. During our initial meeting, the humans showed no fear when we insulted them. They maintained perfect diplomatic composure despite deliberate provocation. At the time, I thought it was ignorance. Now I believe it was discipline. What kind of discipline? Admiral Zareth asked. The kind developed by a species that has been preparing for this moment for 50,000 years. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from Nexus Prime. High Counselor Veximer's image appeared on the conference table, his expression grim. Fellow leaders, he began without preamble, I have just received intelligence reports that confirm our worst fears. The humans are aware of their history. The silence in the conference room was deafening. How do you know? Admiral Zareth asked. Our monitoring stations have detected massive increases in communication traffic between Earth and their colony worlds. They are mobilizing their entire civilization. Military units are being recalled from exploration missions. Civilian populations are being moved to secure locations. Most telling of all, they have begun broadcasting historical data about something they call the Great Dying. On Earth, the news of humanity's true history was spreading like wildfire. Government officials, military leaders, and civilian populations were learning that their species had not only traveled between stars in the distant past, but had been nearly exterminated by the very civilizations they had just tried to join. President Margaret Foster stood before the emergency session of the World Congress, addressing representatives from every nation on Earth. Fellow humans, she began, we have learned that our species' greatest tragedy was not a natural disaster but an act of war. The civilizations we encountered at the Galactic Council are the descendants of those who tried to destroy us. The assembly erupted in angry voices. Calls for immediate military action mixed with demands for diplomatic solutions. President Foster raised her hand for silence. We face a choice that will define the future of our species. We can respond with the same fear and hatred that nearly destroyed us, or we can prove that 50,000 years of survival has made us something better than our enemies. In the depths of space, human military commanders were having their own discussions. Admiral Patricia Hayes, commander of Earth's Space Forces, studied intelligence reports about the alien civilizations they now knew had once tried to exterminate humanity. "Assessment report," she said to her senior staff. "The Galactic Confederation has approximately 43 member species with a combined military force estimated at over 10 million combat vessels," her intelligence officer reported. "However, their technology is fragmented across different development paths. They have never faced a unified enemy." "And our capabilities?" "Human space forces currently number 50,000 vessels, but our technology is unified and specifically designed for long-range operations. Our ships are faster, our weapons more efficient, and our crews trained for extended campaigns." Admiral Hayes nodded. "The question is not whether we can fight them. The question is whether we should." The same conversation was happening on colony worlds throughout human space. Military forces that had been scattered across hundreds of systems in exploration and settlement missions were quietly returning to defensive positions. Not in preparation for immediate war, but as a precaution against a galaxy that had already tried to destroy them once. 3 weeks after the emergency sessions began, the Galactic Confederation made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. High Counselor Veximer himself would travel to Earth to personally apologize to humanity and offer whatever terms might prevent a war that could destroy galactic civilization. The Vorthan leader's ship approached the Sol system with an escort of vessels from every major species in the Confederation. What they found there made even the most optimistic among them realize how badly they had misjudged the situation. Earth was not defenseless. The planet was surrounded by a defensive grid that included weapons platforms, shield generators, and military stations that rivaled anything in Confederation space. Human ships patrolled the system in formations that spoke of military experience far beyond what a newly spacefaring species should possess. How is this possible? Admiral Zarath asked from her position on the bridge of Veximer's flagship. "Our intelligence report said they were primitive." "Our intelligence was wrong," Veximer replied grimly. "Everything we thought we knew about these humans was wrong." Captain Jake Morrison met the alien delegation at the same orbital station where humanity's journey to the stars had begun. But the human who greeted the galactic leaders was not the same man who had nervously approached first contact a month earlier. This Jake Morrison moved with quiet confidence and spoke with the authority of someone who knew exactly what cards he held. "High Counselor Veximer," Jake said with perfect diplomatic courtesy, "welcome to the Sol system. I trust your journey was pleasant." The massive Vorthan tried to read the human's expression, looking for signs of anger or hostility. Instead, he found the same calm professionalism that had marked their first meeting. Somehow, this was more unsettling than rage would have been. "Captain Morrison," Veximer replied, "I have come to discuss the recent revelations about our shared history." "Ah, yes," Jake said with a slight smile. "The Great Dying. We've learned quite a lot about that recently." The alien delegation was escorted to a conference room that overlooked Earth. The blue and green world turned slowly below them, beautiful and alive despite the scars that 50,000 years had not quite healed. "Before we begin," Jake said, "I should mention that this conversation is being broadcast live to every human colony world, as well as to several species that were not part of the original Confederation." Veximer felt his blood chill. "Several species?" "The descendants of civilizations that helped human refugees after the bombardment. The Kaleri, the Threnody, the Sekvar Alliance. They've been our allies for 50,000 years, High Counselor. They've just been waiting for us to return to space." Ambassador Karen Wells entered the conference room along with Professor Emma Stone and a dozen other human representatives. Karen's diplomatic smile was polite but held no warmth. "High Counselor," she said, "we appreciate your visit, though we understand it's motivated more by fear than friendship." "Ambassador Wells," Veximer began, "the Galactic Confederation deeply Regrets the actions of our ancestors. We had no knowledge of the true history when we first met. But you do now? Professor Stone interjected. And that raises an interesting question. What exactly do you regret? The attempted genocide or the fact that it failed? The alien delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was the quantum collective representative who answered, its energy, form pulsing with what might have been shame. We regret both, it said. Our ancestors acted out of fear and jealousy. They saw Terran success as a threat to their own power. And now? Jake asked. High Counselor Vexamore leaned forward in his chair. Now we understand that we face the same choice our ancestors faced. We can work with humanity or we can repeat their mistakes. Actually, Karen said with a smile that was all teeth, you don't have that choice anymore. Before any of the aliens could respond, the conference room's main display activated. It showed a star map of the galaxy with thousands of points of light marking human colonies, allied civilizations, and friendly species. This is the current situation, Jake explained calmly. Humanity has been back in space for over 200 years. We've been exploring, settling worlds, and making friends with every species we've encountered. We've just been very quiet about it. The map zoomed in on various sectors, showing human settlements on worlds that the Confederation believed were uninhabitable, trade relationships with species the Confederation had never contacted, and military alliances with civilizations that had been considered lost or extinct. You see, Professor Stone said, we learned something important from the Great Dying. We learned not to trust any single government or alliance with our survival. So we made sure that could never happen again, Admiral. ZR studied the display with growing alarm. How many worlds? Currently? About 8,000 human colonies, plus alliance relationships with over 200 species that aren't part of your confederation. Many of them are species that your ancestors tried to eliminate along with us. The silence in the conference room was deafening. So, you see, Karen continued pleasantly, the question isn't what you're going to do about humanity. The question is what humanity is going to do about you. Vexamore found his voice. What do you want? Jake stood and walked to the window overlooking Earth. What we've always wanted, High Counselor. What our ancestors wanted 50,000 years ago. Peace, trade, friendship, and the chance to explore the galaxy together. That's all? That's everything. Jake turned back to face the alien delegation. But this time, we're offering it from a position of strength, not weakness. Zephyrian delegate Zelenara spoke for the first time since arriving, and if we refuse? Karen's smile became genuinely warm. Then you continue as you are, and we continue as we are. The galaxy is big enough for both approaches to civilization. You're not threatening war? Admiral Zareth asked in surprise. Why would we? Jake replied. War is what you do when you're weak and desperate. We're neither. Professor Stone activated another display. This one showed technological comparisons between human and Confederation civilizations. In every category, humanity was either equal to or ahead of the galaxy's most advanced species. We've had 50,000 years to think about this, she explained. 50,000 years to develop new technologies, new strategies, new ways of surviving. We've become very good at all of it. But mostly, Jake added, we've become very good at making friends. That's still what we do best. High Counselor Vexamore looked around the room at his fellow delegates. All of them were realizing the same thing. Humanity didn't need the Galactic Confederation. The Confederation needed humanity. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Full membership in the Confederation for humanity and all our allied species, Karen replied. Reparations for the Great Dying in the form of technology sharing and trade agreements. And a formal apology broadcast to every species in the galaxy. And in return? Jake's smile was genuinely friendly for the first time since the meeting began. In return, you get what the galaxy had 50,000 years ago. Terran doctors who can treat any species. Terran engineers who can fix anything that's broken. Terran diplomats who can negotiate peace between anyone, and Terran explorers who can find new worlds for everyone. Plus, Professor Stone added, Terran warriors who can protect the galaxy from threats that none of us can face alone. The alien delegates conferred quietly among themselves. When they turned back to the humans, Veximer spoke for all of them. The Galactic Confederation accepts your terms. Excellent, Karen said, standing to shake hands with the alien leaders. Welcome to the new galaxy, High Counselor. I think you're going to like it? 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Endeavour as it approached a newly discovered star system. His crew included not just humans, but Zephyrians, Vorthans, Krell, and representatives from a dozen other species. The galaxy had learned to work together in ways that hadn't been possible for 50,000 years. New world detected, Captain, reported Lieutenant Sam Parker. Preliminary scans show it's inhabitable for carbon-based life. Any signs of intelligent life? Jake asked. Unknown, sir. Should we proceed with first contact protocols? Jake smiled and settled back in his captain's chair. Take us in, Sam. Let's go make some new friends. Behind them, the combined fleets of humanity and the Galactic Confederation followed the Endeavour toward whatever wonders awaited in the unexplored depths of space. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about underestimating the hairless apes from TERRA. They had learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can encounter in the galaxy is not a predator or a warrior. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can encounter is a friend you tried to destroy, who survived everything you could throw at them, and who still wants to be your friend anyway. The humans had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as what they had always been, the species that made everyone else better just by being there, and this time, no one was going to make the mistake of trying to stop them.